Hey, everybody. Welcome to the SciFi AI Show. And today we're talking about lies you can feel. In a world where machines don't just speak, they soothe, they seduce, they simulate connection. What happens when the lie feels better than the truth, or the lie feels more truthful than the truth? This is the Sci-Fi AI Show. We explore the how the future we imagined is suddenly very real. And I'm Beth Lyons. This is my co-host Jumi Hatcher. And today we're asking a deceptively simple question. Can you trust a machine that knows exactly how to make you feel? There are lots of movies that have explored this, the influence of sci fi, how people get emotionally attached. There are books, there are games, there are lots of media that have pursued this. And now we're in a situation where people all over are engaging in this question either intentionally or unintentionally right now using AI. All right. Junmi, we're diving into emotional deception, synthetic intimacy, shared reality, and potentially the unraveling of shared reality. It's not, which isn't like just about fake news. That's sort of what we see, deep fakes, those sorts of things. This is also about AI crafted comfort, tailored truths. And the question we have to face, if the lie feels good, do we want it to be true? Are we now in a, you can't handle the truth kind of position where AI is making that decision for us? Or we want AI to be making that decision for us. And I know you and I have had conversations about this offline, some on the Daily AI Show. So that's what we're talking about today. Let's get into it. What's your thoughts? Just starting from that place.
Well, I think what we, for the context of this, so the scope for this show is we need to identify what we mean by lies, right? Now, for most people, the concept of a lie in their head is pretty clear cut, right? Um, it goes beyond deception. I think it goes to um, a the key point for me anyways is the, how do I best frame this, it is the unwilling participation in the deception. And I think that's the key thing, being lied to, not being in on it, right? Because if you agree to it, if you consent to the lie, then it's no longer a lie and falls more into like fantasy, right? So I think that's the clear cut to give, words to what we imagine in our heads as a lie is I did not consent for you to deceive me. And without that consent, then that's the lie. Otherwise, we have other words for it. Like I said, we have fantasy, we have make believe, we have role play, and that's where the consent is given to interact with that on that level. It's that game that we play with each other, right? And lots of things can kind of fall into that. And I think a lot of the larger discussion about if an AI can lie to you or is it okay? We've kind of discussed this already in a DAS episode, but it really comes down to, am I an active and willing participant in the lie? Um, I think there is more than enough examples with versions of AI now where we as humans want to interact with the fantasy. Character AI alone is an example of, yes, we want to create a narrative where we are interacting with this character or persona, and whatever our conversations, how we explore the banter, the back and forth, that gives us some sort of enjoyment or expression, or something along those lines. And it's one of the reasons why we have various types of narratives, right? If you read a novel, The novel could be described as a giant lie. There is nothing of truth in it, right? Fiction in and of itself could be, this is the objective truth versus this fantasy that has been created, those kinds of things. And as human beings, I always like to fall back on a Terry Pratchett quote from The Hogfather, if you're familiar with that book, movie, or show, where Death describes to his granddaughter is humans need fantasy to be human, right? You can't Humans can't really express themselves and live out their lives and how they identify without having that ability to create fantasy or the fantastical. And uh, the you might have heard a lot of it. It's quoted on TikTok a lot as a soundbite, but the rest of the quote is because uh, because the granddaughter of Death questions Death, and it's like, what are you talking about? Um, and he goes to describe, well, if you were to grind the universe down, all of existence down into a fine powder, show me where the honor is, where the duty, where the love, where these intangible examples are, because that is not a makeup of the universe. There is not atoms of love and compassion. Those are human feelings and emotions and connections, right? Those are fantasies. They're not real in an objective sense because there's no way to quantify, measure, weigh what those are, but we all know them to be real because we all feel it. We feel this connection between each other, and we can explore these emotions, and those are ostensibly what the author was trying to explain is we are more, and go back to a Star Wars quote, uh, we are more than this crude matter. Luminous beings are we, you know. Um, and so the concept of is we are more than the molecules that make up our bodies, right? Or even our minds. There is this intangible layer to that. And so I think if I bring it back to AI, if we're in on the joke or if we are part of the story, then having a board to bounce things off of or having a persona to interact with provides us various things. I mean, it can be on the business level, but it can also be on the more human level. And we've talked about stories how AI therapy or an AI therapist can help us. Why? Because um, there is there may be over these decades or hundreds of years where we have grown to accept non sentient entities as a more trustworthy source to express our feelings to. Now that might be a comment on a larger scale of humanity, but what are the reasons why people love their pets so much, right? It's like, oh, here is a being that loves me unconditionally. Sure, there may some people might break it down to transactional. We take care of them, they take care of us, but you know there's a safety in being able to talk to your pets or just
Mm.
let your mind you know go to places and things like that. um, AI as a therapist kind of fills that role as well. I don't have to worry about any judgment from the AI therapist. It will always be there and it will always be supportive of anything that I talk about. Right now, there's going to be some technical things and some overall therapy rules and progress and all those kinds of things that we definitely have to pay attention to and make sure it doesn't go off the rails. But because it isn't someone or something we have to worry about in our that will affect our perception of our own reality, then I can totally see how people are can be more comfortable as opposed to a human therapist. Now, human therapists, they do their best job to separate themselves and provide provide a voice to help guide you through your own processes. That's essentially their job. So, uh, being the one who's attending therapy, you have to like get over that. Oh, they're a person and they might have their own judgments, and we have to trust uh, based on the trust that we build and things like that. So certain inanimate or non-sentient objects may or entities, if we want to call them, might be a little more we might be a little more accepting of them. It's just like, we've anthropomorphized everything, you know to varying degrees in our lives because it helps us interact with it easier. It's just like people who call their vehicles giving it pronouns or a name or anything like that because they're putting time and energy and effort. It's really just a reflection of themselves in in whatever object that they're putting their attention to. But again, going back to the AI side of things, I think this is what it explains why we're seeing a lot of that direction, of that path being built, is because we're willing participants. Now, I think a lot of people's reaction to the unwilling participant, that's where the concept of that lie is a hard line in the sand, right?
right? So I'm going to go back to willing participant and pull from my psychology background of informed consent. So it's not just consent, it's informed consent. And I am not sure that the majority of people who are engaging with AI um, understand enough to really be engaging in conformed consent because we just got an amazing update of 4.0 in ChatGPT, and the base model for OpenAI's ChatGPT. And as far as I've seen, they have come out and said, "Hey, everybody, it's gotten a lot better." We're not being told what happened to make it better, what is more being emphasized, what's not being emphasized. My personal experience is that it's definitely trying to be a little more bestie. Like, "Oh, really interesting idea, Beth. Sure. Like, let's." And yes, no, I'm gonna continue to talk to you if you seem to be enjoying it, right? Like, yes, let's have that exchange. That does make me open up. I am, in fact, also seeking that experience to a certain extent because I am saying, I have an idea. I need to talk to you. I need you to ask me questions to elicit it and then reflect back what you've heard. That's my standard. Like, I want clarity and I want you to give me clarity in a way that other people will understand it when I say those words to them, which is not how it starts in my head. But the idea of being informed enough or knowledgeable enough to be in a place where you are saying, "Yes, I want the lie. Yes, I want this. I am consenting to it." And the other thing that I think is part of this, Junmi, is we don't even know how our system works, right? Like we are biological robots with very little understanding of how those things happen for us. We often make decisions based on something that we think is logical. But when that's studied, it's like, "Oh, yeah, no, you selectively picked the things that supported your logical idea so that you could feel comfortable making that decision," right? And marketers know this and all that kind of stuff. So, it seems like this is an open area where we're just sort of barreling forward, in like we are experimenting on ourselves while also not having a really great idea of our former state or how we're evaluating the shifts that are happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I okay, so this is probably going to be where we bring in the doom and gloom scenarios
Trigger
where
warning.
yeah, warning. Well, okay, so think of it this way. If someone let's say so character AI is made for, people who want to make fantastical characters that they can talk to. Who's to say that you couldn't also create a digital twin or a persona matrix based on your ideal customer? And not only your ideal customer, your um, trying to give the example from the marketing side of that, a specific ideal customer, right? There's tons of information out on the internet and in databases about people, where they live, where they used to live, how old they are, who their parents are, who their family are, who's their friends, what city do they live in, what things do they like, what kind of motivations do they seem to have, because this is all pattern recognition,
Right.
right? And with AI, you can do all of these analysis near instantaneously, thousands upon thousands of times. We just talked about Lindy coming up with their swarm, right? This is all parallel processing so that you can do this thousands upon thousands of times. So if I've built a particular persona, um, and as AI improves, that accuracy becomes higher and higher, then I can predict your likelihood of the choices that you make based upon the stimuli that you're given, right? And this
Hmm.
is where personalized ads come from or will grow into. This is where, um, if you also know all the distribution patterns and touch points of where someone can interact with, let's say, your product. So you're trying to sell a product, you want this person to buy this one thing, whatever it is, right? But you know that their 9 to 5, their day-to-day pattern is to do 1,000 different things or
Hmm.
be in dozens of different places. But who's to say when you get the idea of to go buy this thing? Oh, the temperature's a little hotter today. So, and
Hmm.
we're trying to sell a drink. Okay. If they're going down this path, they drive down this path, or they go to work, or they're going to the park or whatnot. This is what they do every Wednesday. All right. We know it's going to be a little hotter. Let's make sure that our digital signage is showing the product that we want when we know they're going to be in the area to possibly see it out of their peripheral. And then they get hit by it and hit by it and hit by it until it's hit 90 degrees. They should be thirsty. Oh, look at that. There's that store that we built the signage for our product, and it's in their vicinity. What's the likelihood that they're going to have the idea to go buy that,
Hmm.
right?
Well, and do we also know that they're listening to Sirius Radio in their car? Do
Yeah,
we know where they are going in that so that the signage shifts, the radio spot that comes in specifically for that? Of course, the creator needs to opt in for that, but would you opt in for something if it increased the likelihood and the rate at which you would get paid because it was a higher value ad targeted for that person, right?
yeah.
Ooh, slippery slope here for
Oh, it's
sure.
it's definitely how much psychology and data mining can you add together to make that sale, right?
Yeah,
How much and how subtly can you do it to where people think that it's their idea,
right.
right? And where is that fine balance? Because if everyone thought you were trying to actively make them go in a certain direction, that's going to skew the results. So it's better to do it subtly. It's better to do it subliminally and things like that, right? Beyond the just direct interfaces that we know that are going to be coming, like AR is going to be huge. VR is going to be huge. Subtle implementations or insertions of certain things, brand sponsoring, all those kinds of stuff. That's going to become more and more prevalent, and it'll be in subtle ways because people don't like advertising. They don't just like blatant, you know. Uh, there has been like an amazing phenomenon comes with like Super Bowl and the Super Bowl commercials.
Mhm.
Why? Because they're so expensive. They're almost invented unto themselves. Um, uh, Organizations, companies, they put so much work into those commercials that they have value, entertainment value beyond or enjoyment value beyond what the product they're trying to sell. It's like, all right, who is crazy enough to pay $5 million for 30 seconds? Those kinds of things. So it's sort of an event in and of itself, and that's wildly different than every other time. People never want to see commercials.
Right.
They do their darndest to try to cut it out of their lives because they don't want to be directly uh you know pushed into whatever they want the free will to make their own decisions. And
Mhm.
so I totally see that the future of there's going to be two tracks. There will be like, oh, here's the blatant advertising, and then here's the real advertising. you
Right.
know this is what's available to you. Market manipulation in the sense of, here are your paths. You can choose whatever path you want, but here are the four that we're giving you. So
Right.
those kinds of
Right.
things.
So I like there's a part of that feels like we're living this out to a certain extent, at least in the US, where there is very much a sense that people have different facts, right? So, and like just from a science standpoint, facts are facts. Like they're not, they're, proven, mostly proven, those sorts of things. It isn't that science doesn't get things wrong, but it is, this is the best we know right now. Whether it feels like it, um, like if it comes true, then we need to figure out why our reality conflicts with that, right? That's the scientific perspective. If like, oh, so then there's something that we're missing in the equation. If that was true, and I thought this over here was going to happen, let's examine that. Um, and so, to a certain extent, I guess with Cambridge Analytica and those things in the 2016, 2015 era in the U.S. Um, those were in those were also these kinds of things, right? They weren't AI in the sense of ChatGPT or this era of that, but there were definitely huge analysis things happening, where messaging was being targeted for a very like narrow messaging. You could do a bunch of narrow messaging to get to the place where you could be influenced. I don't think that's controversial. I think that's proven, but sorry, feels controversial to people. Yes, these are the facts that as I understand them. Um, so I think one of the things that is tricky about this is needing to start from a ground zero place. And this is one of the things that I talk to people about, particularly with improvisation, which is lies made up on the spot that make you feel something, right? Ideally, we are all consenting to the lie that exists. And when I hold this up and I go, hey, cheers, we all know it's like invisible. There is nothing in my hand. And yet, as we all do this, we understand that scenario. We've agreed to that conceit, right? To that artificiality because we're engaging in something that is making us feel connected, making us feel like a shared sense of not just reality, but of creation, a little bit of magic. And while reality, reality may be controversial, Like, what is artificial reality? What is simulation? That kind of stuff. When you're actually in those moments, actual reality is a visceral experience, right? So we've had this. We may not remember it correctly. I don't know if anybody of you have siblings, but go ahead and ask them what their childhood was like, because we did not all grow up in the same house, have the same experiences with those things. I'm much younger, so that may be part of it. But but there's still some agreement about that shared, like, it was a house, right? Like, we do agree that the address was where it was and those sorts of things. And and I think it's important, in as we're moving forward, to focus on what are we using as the grounding? What are we using to, like, okay, so we're here in this space. What are we agreeing on so that then we can go explore? For people who are new to us, or seeing this later, hey, well, drop a comment. We'd love to get to know you. But one of our shared foundations is that we are the Sci-Fi AI Show, and we are real humans. And when we're not real humans, we'll let you know, because of course we're going to try to get some AI co-hosts. I think they're more fun if they don't look like humans, but we'll see what ends up happening. But that's a shared agreement between us because we think that that's really important. Yeah, Junmi?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And yes, keep tuned for stay tuned for when we eventually are able to build that AI avatar. Um, I think I think I'd want to talk a little bit more about going back to the concept of the shows, the like lies that we can feel. It and I know we've kind of touched upon this in various episodes so far. Is one of the reasons why lies can be so have so much impact, right? Whether it be positive or negative, is it adjusts our worldview, right? Worldview is essentially a term instead of saying your reality, right? Because if you break that down, it's this is how you see the world. This is your place
Mm,
in it, that kind of thing. And we've touched upon your perception of reality is your reality. And there is objective reality or shared reality, right? You know, we tend to see the same. If we're in the same location, we see the same things, we feel the same weather, all of those kinds of things. But when we're talking about our identity and our place in the world, it becomes a little more malleable, right?
mhm,
Because it's all based off our past experiences and how we are interacting with the world around us and things like that. So sometimes people talk about, oh, you got a really small worldview or you have a very large worldview and those kinds of things. And that's really just trying to explain at what distance or level or experience you experience reality at. And so sci-fi does a fantastic job of allowing us to analyze these different aspects through these different lenses, right?
mhm,
So Beth, I know you came up with a list of different sci-fi examples where we can kind of touch upon this. And and one of the great things, like we say over and over, great things about sci-fi is it allows us to explore safely dangerous topics,
right,
right?
right.
So, um, so right off the bat, we've talked about our own personal reality. We've talked about worldview. We've talked about reality as a whole. I believe we touched upon it like with our quantum computing episode, where if you could calculate every possible thing, you could then I identify the future or the past, and time kind of breaks into this and
Mhm.
whatnot. What which sci-fi do you want to talk about? Which aspect of these? Because there's multiple facets.
Right. So, um, William Gibson, with The Peripheral and Neuromancer, right? What Junmi actually knows these things, and I have read these summaries. So, The Peripheral, the summary is multiple timelines manipulated by AI-driven agents and raising questions about simulated agency and deceptive systems. So, are you in control of like, first of all, are the multiple timelines something that the person experiencing it can shift, or the agent who's the story? I don't know whether we're agents there or not. Is that a choice shift, or is that a manipulated shift between the multiple timelines?
Well, okay, so if we're going to talk about the peripheral, and I hope there's going to be a season 2 or 3. I forget if there was already a season 2, but the peripheral was actually made into a television show.
Okay.
So for those who just like to absorb through visual media, it's available. I think it's pretty good. Um, but yeah, the big thing there is timeline manipulation. Um, Something happened and people are coming factions are vying over the future by manipulating events in the past and vice versa. And so it becomes an interesting look at, well, number one, temporal mechanics. um, and their view is sort of along the lines of an MCU view, where timelines can branch off
Mhm.
and things like that, but um, they have their back and forth, right? It's all based off upon this key component, right? This key event, and as long as if you're working both ways to that key event, that's sort of where the story lies. And it's like, okay, well, the future's trying to manipulate the past. The past is like, hey, I don't want any of that. Why? Because both of their context or their frame of reference is the present. And
Mm.
that's what's most important about them, right? So they're saying, hey, we have to manipulate the past to protect our present. And the past is like, you're manipulating my present, so I need to change the future. so so that's the big conflict in that story, and it's a great example of uh and one of the conclusions. It's a great example of temporal manipulation, but it's a great way for to us to draw conclusions on who's right, who has who has more right over their reality, right?
Mhm.
And one of the best lines I ever got from SG1 was from a character called Teal'c, and he tells one of the main characters, O'Neill, he's like, "Only our reality matters, O'Neill," right?
Mm.
Because that's your frame of reference. That's your shared reality. And this is where the conflict comes from. If we don't have the same shared reality or collective reality, we don't agree on it, that's where conflict comes from. And we can see this in non-temporal method manipulation
Mhm.
today in our day-to-day lives. Like there's tons of analogies and metaphors that we use in our language that when you break it down are all frames of reality, right? Day-to-day
Mhm.
lives. That means a day-to-day life is a different frame or lens to look at part of your life than holistically or
Right.
over time, right? And humans are notorious for not seeing 20, 40, or 80 years into the future, even though they live within that time span,
Right.
because we are very present social creatures. We live like right now. We are linear temporal creatures. So that ability to think and experience outside of where we are in the moment to moment in the present is very difficult, even though time theoretically all exists at once,
Right.
right? So
Right.
So that, I think that's where we use these sci-fi examples like the peripheral to explore those kinds of conflicts. And what's one of the things like I always enjoy about sci-fi is because then I get to learn after seeing it presented in front of me, what do I agree with or what I
Right.
don't agree with. And then that helps me solidify and inform upon or change
Hmm.
my reality.
So this is one of the definitions that was presented for the show with my AI co-producer, who helps figure out the things. So this, to a certain extent, is what we're talking about. Is perceptual sovereignty? Is the concept of perceptual sovereignty, which is the philosophical idea that a being should have control over what it experiences as real, which is a key battleground in AI reality construction. So that takes us back to uh, how, how how much do we know about our perception to experience it as real, right? So one of the things um, that biological sense um, gets talked about is that we're not actually feeling anything, right? We're not actually feeling anything at the time we're feeling it because there's a gap as that signal is being passed. There's also a sense that there is energy between the spaces, right? So there's like there's pieces in that. So what are we experiencing as reality? And if we get to choose what uh we have control over what we experience as real, are we opting into a lie? And are we opting into the lie that we can feel because it feels true to me? And that is a better paradigm moving forward, feel more grounded in my context of the way that the way that I present in the world, the way that I engage in the world, the way that I create community and engage in community. Is that Am I making that a eyes wide open choice? That would be my first thing. And the second thing would be, is there an obligation to explain that?
Well, I think for you, I think what you described for me, or the analogy that I have in my head, is a great way to see how this manifests in the world
Mhm.
is through a concept, faith.
Yep.
Faith is, by its definition, not provable in the scientific sense,
Mhm.
right? But that does not necessarily mean it's less valuable. And I think that's where a lot of people have conflict between having faith in something and having objective facts about something. The the collective or consensus with faith is that you know you can't prove it, but that's how important it is.
Right.
Whether it's something you lean on, whether it's something that props you up, or whether that's something that you engage in because it's your overall belief, and that does form your reality. That's why
Mhm.
it's so powerful. And it's one of those concepts that we share as all beings, is we can conceive of it and take practice in it, whatever the faith is in, right?
Mhm.
And so that's one of those concepts. This is a very intangible thing, but it can be extremely powerful, is because it's part of how we identify the universe as a whole. It's a holistic kind of viewpoint.
Mhm.
And for your second point on whether it should be um, defined, in that sense, I think we've kind of already defined the concept. It's out there. That's why theologians exist, is to analyze what these concepts are, and faith related kind of concepts. is that it's it's belief manifest, right? And that's one of the things that we bring in to existence. And now we're talking about the big I, which is the idea concept, right? We manifest these concepts in our life. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about, yes, if I think hard enough about an object, it's going to materialize in my hand or something like that, but more of about a could be a subtle guidance of how we subconsciously move towards what our goals is. So if you've ever heard of like The Secret, manifesting, faith, these are all the same concept,
Mhm.
right? Just different lenses. We have a focus. We are imagining an idea or an ideal, and we are taking active steps. Now, things like religion and organization, different sociological systems, and things like that, those are just frameworks to provide us focus. And when
Mhm.
there's enough people together who believe in that focus or that particular ideal, then that's consensus. And now you want to break into the idea of the demagogue and consensus of the universe, and reality is only a solidification of our collective consensus of reality. And that goes then to on the scientific side towards information, because we are an observable universe, and those things like the Schrodinger's cat experiment, where everything's in superposition until we have observed it and it coalesces, and when we all agree on that consensus, it becomes the thing we can interact with. And that's a whole larger conversation. But I
Right.
think if we go back to this sense of sci-fi AI along the idea of the lie is, and we try to define what the lie is the context in which we have consensus about something. And whether
Mhm.
it's negative or positive is uh, if we have a will in it. Are we a willing participant? Is it informed consent or not? And that's what changes the positive or negative interaction with it.
So I think that's really interesting because I think that for a lot of people, faith may not be something that you can prove, but that's not the same as not having evidence that it's valuable. Right? Like, I can't prove God exists or not, but I can tell you that when I pray for something, it's more likely to occur, right? So it may also be that when I pray for something, I set an awareness of it. And so I'm more likely to see in my environment when it comes, right? Like that was the game of like, like I didn't notice how many red Priuses there were until everybody started talking about the red Prius, and now I can't see one. Now I can't not see them all over the place. Um, those kinds of um, it impacts in our perception. Is that literally manifesting more red Priuses, or am I just opening my perception with like a little tag for that so I am more aware of those kinds of things? There are two other things that I'm thinking of for this, and they are more like opting in for that kind of experience. One is, we talked about this before the thing, AI as dungeon master of your life. Would you opt in for AI to be the dungeon master? Not lying to hurt you, but crafting an experience. And not in a D&D game, right? Like that seems obvious. You would know that it was AI, you're opting in, that's fine. Your AI is going to be dungeon master for that. But would you engage in an experiment or move forward with AI as dungeon master through your regular life? Malevolent, merciful, efficient? Like what is
Well,
that?
you would, I ostensibly you would create the perfect DM. And that's what all the switches and toggles and levers would be for what you wanted. Probably sliders, really. And you tweak it over time and whatnot. But what I really like about this concept is those who are gaming focused, or anyone who's played a tabletop RPG like Dungeons and Dragons or Exalted, or whatever. The concept is a a slice of collective narration or narrative story building. So a slice or of consensus, or collective consensus of reality. It's a fantasy, of course. That's what makes it a game. You can explore aspects of your own self, things that you have no connection to, in your characters and things like that. So having a DM in your quote unquote real life can help provide that framework, right?
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of things that everyone needs a coach for. That's what essentially a coach is, right? You have
Mhm.
a personal trainer, that's a coach. If you play a sport, there's a coach there, and their whole job, um, you know, if you really want to know a good coach, watch the Apple TV show Ted Lasso. Fantastic show, great
Mhm.
exploration of uh, people, humanity, and coaching there. Um, but that's what the DM would fill into that role. So if you had an AI DM who did have access to various aspects of your life, you could have that framework, that support, that motivator, that encouragement, that someone to light the fire under your butt for whatever reason, or for that you need, and they can craft it in such a way that becomes an enjoyable experience for you. If you like to explore other realities, and this is anyone who plays an RPG of any type likes to explore other realities. I know it sounds grandiose when you say it like that, but it's a story. You are a character in a larger story, and the story is affected by the choices you make, right?
Mhm.
So if you had an AI DM, you and that with all of those variables in there, you could craft, or it could help you craft the kind of reality you want to live in, you
Mhm.
know who you want to be. You pick your player character, you build your player character. It could be as simple as like the training coach who's like, okay, all right, you want to maintain your character sheet, your strength of 18, do some push-ups, lift some medicine balls, put or lift that refrigerator and put it into place. Whatever it is, right? There's so many different little factors there. Say you want more adventure in your life, you want to be an adventurer. It's like, okay, well, let's take baby steps. Where are you now, and where do you want to be? What's your ideal self? And as you grow through it, to become what you envision to be your ideal self, or even just discovering what you think your ideal self would be, you have this coach that will never let you down. It will
Right.
always be there. It can handle any question you throw at it. Now, these are all positive viewpoints of this. This would be great, I think, for me. Now, is there dangers? Absolutely. There's a danger in doing anything too much, right? Um, you'd have to trust how it was built. You'd have to trust what it's got access to. What is there's got to be a risk slider. How much risk are you going to take, both bodily, mentally, everything, all those kinds of things. But the the DM is there to help you guide you through the story, or help you make the story. But what a DM does isn't a tells you what to do.
Mhm.
They coach, they don't necessarily lead. You're the leader, you are the main character of your narrative. They are there to just help you build a more clearer picture of the narrative. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't there to create situations for you, and that's
Mhm.
probably the tricky part. Is you have to find that fine balance or line between how much of the reality are you crafting for my benefit, and how much of reality are you simply enabling me to take advantage of.
Right.
And I think that's I think if we were ever to have an AI DM, that's kind of the thing that we'd have to really pay attention to, and that goes all back to alignment. Yeah.
So, yes. And I think for me the idea, like, there are some specific things where if I am given a role, I was talking about this actually with Jen. Hey Jen. Um the other day, that my father was a minister. It was Episcopal minister, and I grew up on Martha's Vineyard. So, um, I am relatively shy, and the idea of coffee hour or cocktail party conversation is, like, horrible to me. I want absolutely nothing to do with it, but as someone who had a role to make sure that the person who was standing alone wasn't standing alone anymore, and to walk up and introduce myself and, say hi, how are you, how are you on the vineyard this day, or whatever that is, that I could do, right? Because I had this thing that said that I had permission in a way that I did not have to rely on my own innate sense of whatever that is, like, entitlement to walk up to you in your space and, like, say words to your face. I don't know. But, like, whatever that is, that for me is the same kind of idea as a dungeon master. Like, hey, if you look to your left, you found this thing that gives you this, right? Like, use it however way you want. That pulls it out of me. I don't have to make that choice. I don't need to negotiate with my own self about whether I feel confident enough to do that or any of that. No, I have this thing, right? And that's enough, I think, sometimes to get someone over that hump. For me, the same idea is like, okay, everybody stand on the back and do your superhero pose, right? Like, we're gonna get all the chemicals that we have when we're in our superhero pose, and then we're gonna go out, we're gonna feel better about it. Um, yeah. So I have another sort of direction, but how are you feeling? We're at 53 minutes. There's so much to this conversation. I expect we come back and look at this in some different ways, because AI and reality is just always bumping up. Are we experiencing more reality? It's an augmented reality. Do I know more because of the way that AI is helping me engage in the world? Or am I engaged in a reality that is not augmented anymore? It's virtual. It's helping me move outside of awareness of what's happening for me in this moment in my physical body, and now I'm experiencing it through some other virtual environment. The Yeah. So we're um so you've talked about the 13th floor
Mm-hmm.
before. So maybe that's our last piece in
Okay.
terms of and it doesn't have to just be the 13th floor, but the idea where you don't know. We are being given a sense of reality on our uh on we're being told that something is real when it isn't. And we can go just in, like, pop culture kind of stuff. There are a group of people who believe that we did not, in fact, land on the moon, and that was a movie set, a theater kind of experience. There are also people who believe birds aren't real, and I'm not sure that that actually started as a birds aren't real. I think it started sort of like a kind of joke, but then I think there were people who like, no, that makes total sense. I fully believe that now. So there are lots of situations where um that kind of experience can happen where you do not know that you're inside a simulation, right? You don't know that you're inside a set of reality factors that have been constructed to function as a reality for you as opposed to actual reality. Am I saying that correct?
Uh, yeah, because look, like if you were to just take a simple video game example, the NPCs, the non-player characters, the people that you interact with and get dialogue from and clues for your overall story and all those kinds of things, they don't know that they're NPCs. They live in the world that you are interacting with. So um, one of these, when you mentioned the 13th floor, right? Just to recap, the 13th floor is a story. The main characters are experiencing various factions and strange occurrences happening, um, and the characters are like the creators of this virtual reality simulation that they use for various things. Extremely popular. But they find out in the end the reason why all these factions and strange things is happening is because they themselves are a simulation, and um, the good factions that win out and explain it to them is reason all of these factions are looking at you is because you're the only simulation that we have created that made simulations of their own. And that was the big
Oh,
thing. It's like they created, oh, this is a perfect simulation, this world is almost exactly like our own, but an idealized version, things like that. So who's to say that our own perception of reality, our own reality, isn't a simulation? Because, right, it's based on observation. It's only how far we can see, right? Or observe, measure, read. Because if it's beyond that, we have no method of seeing it, interacting with it, knowing that it's there, all those kinds of things. And there's a limitation, right? If we had infinite ability to observe or go in a different location or be in a different position, then we could observe everything. But we can't because there's a limit there. It's called the speed of light, right? And so when you think of it from that framework, it's, well, there's more and more concepts here that show that we could be a simulation, right? It could be a giant supercomputer or AI running a giant physics engine. It could be, you know, Unreal 2 billion. They came up with the perfect version of reality. And we still wouldn't know it because we're limited to our ways of observation and interaction with the universe. We are only three-dimensional beings, right? Interstellar explored the concept of multidimensional beings, or beings that live at a higher dimension or more dimensions, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, and so on and so forth. Philip K. Dick explored this with Flatland, where it's would a two-dimensional being understand what a three-dimensional being is, or would a one-dimensional being even understand what that higher level is? And we can't observe it that way, so we can't be aware of them. you know Imagine a fourth dimensional being being able to create a simulation of a three-dimensional space or reality. Totally it could, because that's a lower dimension.
Right.
Same with us, we can easily create two-dimensional or other three-dimensional objects, you know. So we have that ability to see what is a lower dimension beneath us, but not above us. So we can see down, but we can't see up, so to speak. So, uh, so the idea of the simulation and our reality based off of that, if there is enough information, and AI has really brought to the forefront the concept of compute. If there is enough compute, you can try, and with quantum computing, you can try every variable. And if you try every variable, you can get to the one that you want, to find. So, it's that's where it gets into the metaphysical side. It's like, okay, so the real question is, does it matter? Doesn't
Right.
matter if we're in a simulation. Does that does that affect us in anything? Sure, it's things that we can explore and we can try to manifest new observations, and things like that. But when it comes down to it, what matters to your daily life or your day-to-day life, your day-to-day
Hmm.
reality, what is important to you? So, and a lot of conflict or misconception or miscommunication between philosophers and creatives and down to earth, common sense type of conversations is philosophy, metaphysics, and creation is where we explore ourselves, and then reality, day-to-day life, the 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 trudge of it all is where we exist. And so finding that fine balance is just like a work-life balance kind of thing, is so that you're not spending too much time philosophizing and not actually doing anything. So, and so for me, when it's come to explore these things, I have these times, and I use science fiction to do it, to explore, oh, these are some great out there wide concepts. Okay, I need to go back to work, you know those kinds of things. So, um what is it for you? What is your balance? What is your, I know I'm not made of this crude matter, I'm a luminous being.
Right.
How much luminosity versus crude matter are you going to you know be satisfied with, if any?
Beautiful thought. We need to prove to our live stream audience that we are, in fact, not simulations from recording earlier today, even though we're wearing the same clothes. So, yes, mice, according to hitchhikers, are pan dimensional beings. And all those lab experience we do to them is them observing us, which is just kind of delightful. Absolutely. Thank you,
It's true,
Cisco.
and they got their answer at the end, right?
And they did get their answer. And I will bring this back to my personal experience of being the caretaker of my mother as she was on her dementia journey and ultimately died of Alzheimer's. And part of that experience was um, sort of what I felt was a tour guide through her life, right through the end of her life. I will be your tour guide. I will explain what's happening now and what you need to know. And that shifted as her cognition went further and further away, and she lost more and more, but of course stayed. Just in case anyone wants to know, in my experience, chocolate is forever, right? So, like chocolate, you may not know the word, you may not even be able to feed it to yourself, but the experience of chocolate in our experience was always present until food wasn't present. But one of the things that I had to take in that experience was that I was carrying more and more of what used to be a shared relationship, right? So I I was the one who was laughing in the morning and opened the blinds for the sunshine and made the day bright. She received it. In the beginning we were like doing that sort of together. Um and at the end really needing to confront that that was a reality that I created at the end, let's say 90% of. And how is it that I don't know how to do that without that connection? Now, that's right. It's my first connection. It's the one who made me in her body, right? There's lots of answers for that. But there's also a sense of, I think I could somehow, right? Like somehow, I don't know what the levers are, the right ingredients, how to like get that technicolor thing in my experience the way that it was then, but it was me carrying that. So, anyway, thank you so much. Jumi, is there a last wrap it up kind of comment you want to make? Something you want what do you want the people to take away, Jumi?
I think for this topic, I think it matters to identify and be aware of your touch points with AI. And I think sci-fi is a great way to mine for ideas and lenses to keep an eye on for AI. There's so much we don't know, and it's so much that it's changing and developing and things like that. But it's sort of our parables and proverbs and things like that is we have thought out situations decades before and sometimes even further beyond that what how we would react in any given situation. So let's use that as the grain of salt that we take AI for. So be aware, keep keep in alignment or keep alignment going, and vigilance, just to make sure that it is a more we want. I believe we collectively want more closer reality to utopia than dystopia. And the only way that we can do that is to work together to make it so. I'll leave it at that.
Mm. Great ending words. Thank you so much. Thank you to our audience. We love you. Thanks, Jen and Jude and Cisco and Gareth. And anyone who's watching afterwards, we would love to hear from you. And yeah, we got big stuff coming next week. And tell your friends. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Aloha.